My own obituary. Mr. Bailiff, Chief Minister, Dean, honoured guests, dear friends. First of all, let me thank the Holocaust Memorial Day Committee for this invitation, and it is indeed a great honour for me. The 27th of January, an ordinary day in January which has extraordinary resonances. 27th of January 1945, the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz concentration camp by the Soviet Union, and the beginning of the unravelling of a horror story that would shake the world, and rightly still does. A story of how ordinary is the overture of horror, that begins in silence and ends in humanity sinking to unimaginable depths. The government in Germany, coming to power, offering solutions, stereotyping others as the problem, and seeking to create social outcasts to blame, and then using them to whip up a moral panic from which the majority should be protected. And in the silence, when nobody objected and the media acquiesced, that silence grew into encouragement. Between the years of 1933 to 1945, the National Socialists, or the Nazis, were led by Adolf Hitler and were in power in Germany. Amongst the policies was the idea that Germany and the world had to be cleansed of those deemed undesirable and unfit to live in the new world that the Nazis wanted to create. At the forefront of those deemed unwanted were the Jews. In 1933, approximately 9.5 million Jews lived in Europe, less than 2% of the total European population. Yet this number represented more than 60% of the world's Jewish population at that time, estimated 15.3 million. By 1945, most European Jews, 2 out of every 3, had been killed. It began as a boycott of Jewish shops and businesses and ended in the death of over 6 million Jews. Other groups identified and murdered by the Nazis were disabled people, Romani gypsies, intellectuals, communists, Freemasons, homosexuals, and others deemed undesirable. Many of these were sent to and died in concentration camps such as Auschwitz, where over 1.2 million people were murdered. Here, in the Channel Islands, the reality of that situation deeply affected the people living here, and still does. And these atrocities happened a stone's throw away in time, and it could happen again. Just when we think we have passed one inhumanity too far, memories and fears fade. Complacency sets in, and evil triumphs in the silence of those who say nothing and look away. Darfur, Cambodia, Bosnia, and other echoes in parts of the world remind us. And Rwanda. Rwanda, I visited in 2008. And one of the first duties of any visiting official is to visit the genocide memorial. It has the courage to call out those countries, institutions, no matter how large, and the individuals who made it happen, allowed it to happen by their silence and their inactivity. I remember the photographs, presumably taken by families and friends, ordinary men and women and children who were cut down and killed. Ordinary women and men and children who, looking out from their photographs, had hopes and dreams and fears, but never imagined the ultimate fear that they would have to face. Women and men and children, defamed, misrepresented, stereotyped, and dehumanized. Is represented as a threat to others and therefore people who should be destroyed. I remember too the powerful exhibition of shoes that toured the world, the shoes of those who were told to remove them as they entered the Nazi work camps, where they would be further dehumanized, worked to death, starved, murdered. I remember those piles of shoes, ordinary yet extraordinary shoes. And I think of the women and men and children who wore them. I think of them as they removed their shoes for what would be the last time. I remember them, and I know that each and every one of us could have been in those shoes if we had been born in a different time and in different circumstances. And so I ask myself, have we learned the lessons? Does history have enough horrors to shake us from complacency and indifference? And I have to tell you, the answer is no. No, we have not learnt the lessons. Hatred is still with us. Indeed, it is on the increase. In the United Kingdom, since 2016, hate crime has been on the rise. Anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia, misogyny, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, rampant xenophobia, and anti-migrants, and the list continues. Suddenly, prejudices that were silently held are now spoken aloud. Culture wars are promoted by UK government ministers, printed media, and broadcasters, as if equality was something which should only be afforded to the very few, rather than to all. Promoting the idea that equality for one person or group is at the deprivation of equality for others. The principles of equality is that we all have the equal protection of the law and the equal obligation to the law, thereby reinforcing the notion of society. Individuals and communities, no matter how different, living side by side without any preferment. I have watched, not silently, as minorities have once again been depicted and are currently depicted as a threat to the majority. Migrants and refugees depicted as people to be feared rather than welcomed. And welcomed, the contribution of migrants from all parts of the world have afforded the United Kingdom and other countries around the world. Welcomed, because that is what all civilized countries should do. To seek refuge, to be a refugee, is to hold up your hands for help. And as fellow human beings, it is our duty, our human duty, let alone our moral duty, to help. Yet some news editors and some politicians see these people and these minority groups as pawns in a power game. And it's happening around the world. Look no further than Europe, Hungary, Poland, elsewhere. Donald Trump in the United States, and his legacy lives on. And I don't think we have yet heard the last of Donald Trump. So again I ask, have we not learned that to defame, misrepresent and dehumanize others is ultimately to dehumanize ourselves? If we stand back in silence, if we say, but that's politics, what's that got to do with us? If we look away, we become complicit. The overture to the evil does not begin with a clarion. It begins as a whisper that allows by others to fill a silence. And as it fills the silence, the whisper becomes repeated and repeated and repeated until turns into a roar. Yet to stand up and dissent from that roar is to join hands across thousands of generations of women and men who would not be silenced in such situations. The ability to stand in the shoes of others and imagine that it's happening to you. And if you wouldn't want it to happen to you, how dare we allow it to happen to others? So Holocaust Memorial Day is a day to strongly remember. Think of the millions of lives. And then think of each one of them and how they could have changed this world for the better. Think of those faces looking out beyond the camera that captured their photograph. Looking out to a world that they believed would allow them their hopes, their dreams, their lives, their families, their future. Think of those shoes and stand in them. And remember them not as numbers, but as you would remember your own loved ones. Remember them and then look at how people are still today represented as threats, and all they want to do is to live their lives in common with everyone else. Think of them and never remain silent. Never look away. As a gay man, I know this only too well. Our rights exist together. We exist together, only together. Therefore stand with the most defamed, the most misrepresented, the most unfaithful. I will end with a quote from a piece that Paula Feldman wrote for the Jersey Evening Post, which Doug has partially referred to. I quote, "Holocaust Memorial Day gives islanders an opportunity to remember the 21 and the more than 200 other islanders imprisoned for crimes against the German forces and occupation regime. The local commemoration, which usually takes place in the occupation tapestry, looks far beyond Jersey's shores. The mission statement compiled by the committee in agreement after much debate reads, "We believe that the purpose of Holocaust Memorial Day is to not only remember the Holocaust and all who suffered as a result of Nazi persecution for whatever reason, but also to commemorate all those other victims of genocide whenever and wherever it has occurred. To most people, Holocaust Memorial Day commemorates the 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust. But it also remembers the many other victims of Nazi persecution. Up to 1.8 million Poles, including approximately 3,000 Catholic priests, 250,000 people with physical disabilities and mental illness, more than 200,000 Romani Gypsies, between 80,000 and 200,000 Freemasons from German-occupied countries, at least 70,000 German political opponents, resistance fighters from occupied countries and deportees, such as the 21 Islanders, an estimated 55,000 gay men, around 1,900 Jehovah's Witnesses. We remember too those who died and suffered in acts of genocide that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and Darfur." She concludes, "For me, the concluding sentence of the mission statement is paramount, and I make no apologies for repeating it. Holocaust Memorial Day is what can happen when we do not take personal and collective responsibility for racism and bigotry. I am proud to to associate myself with that brave statement in the defence of human values, human rights, and the defence of the individual.